cornerstone DJ with one of the most prolific labels of our time.
I use that resentment to drive me on. I use it as fuel. Like, you lot watch what I'm going to do. You lot watch what I'm going to be. I suffer myself from depression, still, to now. Sometimes I can wake up and I'm just depressed. I don't even know why. I have a therapist. I go to therapy.
Yeah, you can imagine going to our mums and saying, like, yeah, you know, I got depression. Depression? I will give you depression.
Yeah.
I will give you depression. Go upstairs and clean up that room.
Stubborn foolishness. Passion was like a reggae station. And the people that say, listen, I'm going to play music, nice music. What happened to the nice music you was playing before, man? What's all this mad music you're playing? Dance with the devil and them times. But we were committed.
I don't want to get too sentimental here, but having all of us grown up with each other, we are able to now lean on each other.
Yeah. I think it's very important. Yeah. And I never forget that, you know? Never forget it.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing.
Beautiful.
What a beautiful thing. Hello and welcome to another episode of the London Something podcast with myself, DJ Run. I'd like to say a big thanks to everybody who has been supporting the channel over these months, to those of you who have been subscribing, liking, commenting, and just generally giving positive feedback for the work that we're doing here on the channel. I'd like to also thank our sponsor, West End DJ, who offer the best in DJ equipment. If you look at the link in the description, you'll be able to get yourself a discount using the London Something code. My next guest has been around in this scene since its creation, a cornerstone DJ with one of the most prolific labels of our time. With a legacy spanning 30 years, we welcome my friend, Jumpin Jack Frost.
Nice.
How you doing, sir? You okay?
Cool,
Yeah, good. I mean, it's not any secret to those of people on the circuit how close we are. And certainly my experience doing these podcasts has shown me that the closer I am with the person who I'm doing the interview with, the looser I become. I'm going to try not to do that today. I'm going to try to stay on script.
Okay.
Which on script, as you may well know, is that this is more about your life as just a regular human being from Brixton who grew up and became Jumpin Jack Frost. Okay. And then obviously we want to speak about your career because that is going to be, you've had a formidable one and as has been within business and as a DJ. So, but for now, we'd like to kind of start by finding out your earliest memories, where you remember things started for you as a young boy growing up as a child to your mother and father.
Yeah, crazy. Well, I was born in St. Stephen's Hospital, which is now Chelsea and Westminster, in Fulham, 29th of May, 1967. My earliest memories are living in Palace Road in Brixton. I was quite a feisty, rowdy child. Loved adventure. I like playing with ants. I used to play with ants.
Really?
Yeah, I used to play outside with the ants. And I used to make up names for them. I spent hours outside playing with ants.
Were you the oldest child?
No, I got an older sister, her name's Samantha.
Yeah.
And you know Samantha well.
Samantha, yeah.
But Samantha has a different mum to me.
Okay.
So she didn't grow up in the same house as me, but nevertheless, we are very, very close.
Yeah.
But
the reason I asked that is just because where you said about playing with the ants, it conjures up the image of a child on his own.
Yeah, because I spent a long time on my own. I got a cousin who was like my brother, but, you know, he's my cousin, you know. So I spent a lot of time on my own and I played with the ants outside. I got up to all sorts when I was, like, really young, like, from 4 to 5 years old. I was quite a feisty boy.
I mean, you say feisty, 4 to 5, if I think about my own children, 4 to 5, they were like kids. They were like playing with toys. They were like...
I wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I was out on the street when I was 4 or 5 years old.
When you say out on the street, do you mean like, not like just outside the front door?
I was out walking around. I was like, you know, those days, kids could be out until God knows when, and you didn't have to worry about getting kidnapped by paedophiles or stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, we were kids.
It was very different then.
It was different, you know, and there was a lot of wild dogs running around. You used to have packs of dogs running around.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You know what I mean? And, I was just out. I was out till like 9, 10 o'clock at night.
That's a young age to be out so early.
I know.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
I know. Do you know what I mean? But I think it was just, you know, there was loads of us just out. And I used to I used to make go-karts, you know, like we used to make the go-karts and have the string thing and ride down the hills. I used to have a chopper and a budgie. No, I had a budgie. I had a budgie.
Right, yeah, budgie.
I had a budgie, and then after I had a chopper. I never did have a grifter. I never made it to a grifter.
Yeah.
I had a budgie.
Yeah.
Which at the time I thought I was Evel Knievel. So I used to like jump my cousin. I used to tell him to sit down, lie down on the floor, and I used to make a ramp and jump over him. I remember once I must have just skimmed his nose like that. Do you know what I mean? I was like I was a bit of a daredevil.
You know what's interesting about that? Imagine that you're in Brixton, the black community in Brixton, and right across the water in Hackney, it was identical childhood.
Yeah.
Not so much in this case of like being out till like as a 4 or 5-year-old, but then I suspect from something you said just now when you said there were loads of you.
Yeah, there's lots of us.
If there was like a 5-year-old, but then there was a 10-year-old, then it would be all right for the 5-year-old to be there.
Yeah.
But at first I was conjuring up this image of this 5-year-old on his own wandering the streets.
No, there's lots of us. Because you got to remember, like, there was me, there was my cousin, and there were other boys in the area, but we were all around the same age. My cousin was younger than me. He was 2 years younger than me.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
So we're talking about, I think that maybe I was 6, but he didn't stay out late. I played with him in the confines of our house in the garden. He wasn't up and down on the road like me.
Yeah.
I was up and down. But funny enough, you know, like we used to get on the 37 bus and go to my grandmother's, and when I was 5 years old, and my grandmother lived in Clapham Junction, and we'd make our way there on our own, you know? I wouldn't dream of putting a child in a bus now, like 5 years old.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would, and that's the
Just
context.
starting the times as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, it's also the when I was mentioning just now about you've been in Brixton and you know, like over the water in Hackney, they were the same bikes.
Yeah.
They were identical bikes.
Yeah.
They were the same pastimes, making go-karts out of old prams, and also Evel Knievel. Now, there's going to be a bunch of people who are not going to know anything about Evel Knievel, choppers, grifters, or budgies. But, I mean, I saw recently somebody doing something, I thought to myself, you know what, that might be cool to get a chopper again, just to have one.
I'm sure Norman J's got one.
Yeah, I saw it.
I'm sure Norman's got one.
Yeah.
I'm sure Uncle Norman's
And I think Conganati's got one as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Uncle Norman's got one.
Yeah.
I see Norman with his hat and his chopper.
So you're growing up in Brixton and you're out a lot with your friends, I suppose, and family, you know, which you weren't brought up on an estate either, were you?
Well, I started off when I first on Palace Road. We lived in a house, but then we moved to New Park Road, which is where I met the majority of my friends. Do you know what I mean? And I think I moved there when I was about 8.
Okay.
And
that was an estate?
That was an estate.
Right.
That's where I met Elvis, Delroy. That's where the core of my friends,
right, okay.
my friends who I say my childhood friends, that's where it all started there.
Right, okay.
I was about 8, about 7, 8. About 8 when I moved there.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean?
The reason why I asked that
and that was an estate.
Yeah, is because on an estate, that's where you kind of like, you form these friendships that will kind of like steer you because of the pack mentality, for want of another way of putting it. Big up Delroy, Elvis and all those guys, you know what I mean, who I got to meet as time went by. Yeah. And they were in their 30s by the time, or late 20s by the time I met them,
And Colin, who you just...
That's right, he's still here
he just
now.
left,
and
he was just here, and he was one of my friends as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So...
I still got the same friends that I grew up with, you know?
Yeah. So you're on the estate and, you know, like, you're growing up. Tell me what your school life was like.
The first school I went to, I was expelled from. Fen Stanton, I was expelled. And I got expelled from the second school too. Because I was always fighting. And I was quite violent, you know. Like, I stabbed a teacher with a compass. I hit another teacher with a cricket bat. And I was quite challenging. I was quite a challenging child. Yeah.
Where do you think that stemmed from?
I don't know. I don't come from... None of my family are really violent. I know my dad can be a little bit thin. I don't know. I just... No, I was quite a challenging child. I'd fight and use excessive force very quickly when I was young, very, very quickly, just for anything.
As you say that, I have a memory, not to fast forward too far, but of being at my school in Hackney 3 I went to. And
That's my sister went there as well, right?
That's where your sister went there. So your sister was actually in my brother's year. And I don't remember why you came down, but I do remember you and a bunch of other guys from Brixton.
It might have something to do with my sister.
Yeah, I got a funny feeling it might have. But anyway, I'm not going to correlate the challenging childhood to therefore bad, being bad academically. But were you? I
was quite a smart kid.
Right, okay, I was going to ask that.
I was quite a smart kid. I'd done all my exams. Yeah, I was quite a smart kid. Yeah, I was just bad. I was just disruptive. And
you said you grew up on the estate, and why am I bringing up the estate again? I'm bringing that up, and I'm trying to kind of like get this angle because you're my friend. We've known each other for ages, so to us to be sat here in this way, I still want to address it as though because I don't know. You know, I just know you as Frost. You know what I mean? I know you by your first name, obviously, but we've never sat down and gone, you know, where did it start?
Yeah.
We've never done that.
No.
Do you know what I mean? We've never done that. So when I think about it and I think about the estates and I think about the estates that I grew up on and how that all transpired for all of us, and I look at I can see the people in my mind's eye. Yeah. It's like we brought each other up.
I'll tell you a funny story because I remember Roots. Yeah. The TV show at the time, because as you know, we weren't really taught about slavery and stuff like that in school.
Just for those who are listening who might not know about Roots, Roots was a series, was it?
It was a series by Alex Haley.
Yeah, it was
adapted from a book.
Yeah, that's right. It was regarding slavery at the time, and it was quite graphic.
Yeah, about how we were taken from Africa and brought over here, and the slave trade, and it was quite graphic and
it was a very,
very powerful story. And,
yeah,
you know.
and I think it impacted a lot of the black community at that time, particularly the young community as well. Sorry, I just wanted to share that.
So Roots, they started showing Roots, and all of us watched it. And I remember we'd meet in the flats after every episode and go around knocking on people's doors and just beating them up. Do you know what I mean? We'd just knock on the door and just like beat up people on the doorstep. Say, this is for our ancestors. And that is, we were young and we were angry. We didn't know, it was like, it's just what they'd done to our ancestors. And we wanted revenge, man. We went round, it was like a pack of dogs. We were like 8 years old, 7, 8 years old, but there was like 20, 30 of us. So when we knocked on the door and we beat you up on the doorstep, it was like crazy. I look back now and I think, oh my God, I can't believe we've done that. Do you know what I mean? But we were kids and we were angry and we had no knowledge of it up until this TV program, you know? So, yeah. And that was like that pack mentality from the estate.
And that's the point that I'm making. Yeah, that's the point I'm making. And then it's kind of like the syndrome of trying to outdo each other.
Yeah.
You've always come across to me kind of like, you know, like ahead of the game, irrespective of what field I've known you in, do you know what I mean? And I get this feeling that at that time you were, even though you were young, you were probably sort of like leading the pack. Would that be right? Would that be a fair comment?
I think that I was heavily influenced by the young elders because there were older boys than us as well who we followed. You know what I mean? And I got a lot of inspiration from them, and I think that I carry that inspiration with me today. A lot of the guys who ended up being legends in our area. Do you know what I mean? And I think I was heavily influenced, as we all were, by people older. And I kind of took a lot of the things I learned and the ethics and the code of the streets with me through the rest of my life.
But then would you assume that those some of those were good and bad?
Some of them were good and a lot of them were really bad.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them are really bad. Some of these things I've only just shaken off recently because, you know, they're things that you've grown up with and they're bad, and then you don't realise they're bad until you get to a certain age and you grow and you think, this is bad. You know what I mean? It's a bad attitude to have, you know what I mean? So...
No, I can relate to that. I'm
just constantly growing.
Yeah, I can relate to that because look at us, we're at the age we are now. you know, like there's things that I've learned in the last 5 years, 3 years, 2 years about myself. And I say to my friends or anybody that will listen, that actually that growing up in that world without realising, we know it now, but actually we've been carrying a form of trauma
100%.
that
100%.
we're playing out in one way.
I was traumatised by the police.
Yeah, but nobody has actually sat down and goes, this is what you're going through. And so imagine having to learn your way out of that by yourself. It could take years, but it took me a while, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
And experience from other of my peers as well, who learned it quicker than me.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, there was a lot of trauma. We had police harassment. I remember being very young, being at the Brixton riots and watching Brixton burn and watching people being beaten by the police, hiding from the police, trying to do looting at the same time as hiding from the police, being chased by the police. It was just, crazy, and I was really young. I was a kid, really young, So, and police trying to beat us up, all kinds of madness from the police in our area. They were horrible to us, do you know what I mean? They were absolutely, the police to treat us like animals, man, do you know what I mean? So that kind of trauma is something that you take with you, you know what I mean? And you look at society and you look at people outside of the area. There was a time I didn't think, I thought all the black people lived in Brixton. I didn't know that black people lived in East London.
Right, okay.
Until I came to visit my sister.
Right,
Then I looked around and I saw black people and I was like, rah, there are black people right there. That's how locked into our community we was. Yeah, I didn't know, because I didn't meet my sister until a little bit later in life. And it's only when I started coming across the water to visit my sister, I realised that black people live in Hackney. I thought, what? Black people live in East London? I hated East London. I thought, National Front, East London, National Front. First thing that comes to my head. I had no idea that black people even lived in Hackney. I thought all the black people lived in Brixton. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Where I look now, like some of the closest people in my life live this side of the water.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting as well because, just as correlating what you're saying to my own life, that for me, because I had family who lived in Clapham South, that would be somewhere where we'd go bi-weekly. My dad would collect us, take us over there. So I was very familiar with South London from a very young age. But I want to just go back a little bit to where you were speaking about school and that you were an academic child, but you're running this parallel sort of like existence.
I never ever bunked school, never bunked lessons. I was always got my head down, and if I didn't know, I tried to learn. But I was very disruptive, and in the end, I ended up getting expelled from all the schools, so they sent me to boarding school in the countryside.
And that's what I wanted to get to, because by my reckoning, I think that just from what you've told me in the past, and I think what's quite common knowledge, that you went to boarding school.
Yeah.
But I didn't know when that started from.
I went to boarding school when I was 12, and I left when I was 16.
Wow. And tell me about that experience in terms of how long you would stay there, when you often you'd come back.
We stay there. Sometimes I remember staying there. We stay there and I'd go home like every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. Sometimes I'd stay for like the whole term and not go home at all and be there for weeks on end. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so I was quite angry about being there, and I wanted someone to blame, and I was hated. I started building up a lot of rage and hate because I started blaming people, and I was quite, I just hated it. Do you know what I mean? I just hated being there. And it was, at the time, now I look back and I think, thank God I went there, because I think it saved my life, you know what I mean? Otherwise, there's only one way it was ever going to go, do you know what I mean? And I'm really grateful for my time there. Looking back now as an adult, but at the time...
I mean, it's interesting because I've always had this picture of boarding school as being some way...
the word resentful.
Yeah.
I was very, very, very resentful, man. Yeah. Against my mum, against my stepfather, who I hated his guts. Yeah, I still don't like him now, even though he's dead. I still don't like him. I don't care. Yeah, and I just had a lot of really bad resentful feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say there just about how I felt about boarding school. I still do, I think. I still felt of boarding school as somewhere that you go to when have got a few quid about you and you send your children to boarding school. But so tell me how that worked out, because obviously you're saying that you got expelled, but maybe it's just my ignorance on what boarding school really is.
These are special schools for boys who are maladjusted.
Okay.
And, you know, there were 40 boys in the whole school. So there were 5 people in every class. So you did get specialist attention and real good attention.
I'm with you.
And some people didn't take advantage of that, but I did. You know what I mean? And I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot from that setup, from having that close attention. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of almost a one-on-one. I got a lot from that. Do you know what I mean? Where in comprehensive school, I wasn't getting it at all because there was a class and I was just disrupting everything. Do you know what I mean? I was just disrupting, refusing to listen, really rude to the teachers. I just didn't care. You know what I mean? I'd fight the teacher and everything, which was, you know, being in the school, I think it suited me and I settled down and I got into it. You know, I got into learning and I got into that way of life, the whole country way of life, because it was in Berkshire, which was a challenge in itself because there were no black people out there. You know what I mean? And that was a big shock for me. It was a big, big shock to be people looking at me funny and, do you know what I mean? God, it was a nightmare at first. And I mean, I remember being in school, I hated Lenny Henry. I hated him because when I went to school, they had that Tiswas thing and he had that thing, he's go, oh, okay. And when I used to walk around, that's what everyone used to say to me. So I blamed Lenny. You know what I mean? I hated him. You know what I mean? Even up to now, I look at him and I think, you know what I mean? I think, you know what I mean? But hey, you know, it is what it is, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's a character, but you know,
yeah.
I got
but you blamed him.
I got the backlash.
For your backlash of what was happening.
I got the backlash. I hated the geezer. You know, and I've since met him and he's a lovely man who stands up for us and everything. But at that time, nah.
You speak about, which I find it really interesting, that you had this special one-on-one treatment in this area that was predominantly white. It is a boarding school for specifically for maladjusted children, yet you were able to get the, whatever rewards you could from them. But you're doing all of that while having severe resentment for your family.
Yeah. But you know what I done? I used that resentment to drive me on. I use it as fuel. Like, you lot watch what I'm going to do. You lot watch what I'm going to be. Watch me. Watch this. And this is how I learnt that. This is what I do with everything in my life. Everything in my life is always fueled by people not liking me or people doing something against me. And I use it and I turn it around and use it to fuel myself. And I still do it today. I've done it. I started it from then. And it's something that if I want some kind of inspiration, I just look at people that don't like me or people that want me to fail, and it fuels me.
I think to some degree that's in a lot of people in different measures. Yeah, in different measures. We all kind of particularly with the social media world we live in, we all kind of want to be, well, look at me. But what I think you're saying there is I'll show you.
I do it. I've been doing it all my life.
Yeah, you know it.
All my life.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of the evil villain in the movies when something happens and he'll go, I'll be back and I'll show you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
So you're at boarding school until you're 16.
Yeah.
You know, that's a very malleable age, 16, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You know, you could go either way.
Yeah.
At that point. But now you've got to leave the boarding school and you're fully back.
I'm back to London now.
Tell me about that.
Come back to London, a bit of a shock. But you know, at that time, remember, I'm spending school holidays and everything in London. So it's like, you know,
It's not like it's completely rare.
Yeah.
Sorry,
you know what I mean?
Not rare, but it's not like it's completely alien. Then.
Yeah, it's like, you know, because remember, I've still got the same friends and, you know what I mean? By this time, we're all young, we're all kind of leaving school. But, you know, when my mum wants me to get a job, I'm not getting a job. No way, yeah? So I remember they signed me up for a training scheme. I think I lasted about 3 weeks on the training scheme, YTS. I was like, nah, this ain't for me, you know what I mean? So I took to the streets with my friends, innit? So we started popping chains off people's necks and robbing people.
And this is at 16?
This is at 16, yeah.
Right, yeah.
And I went through about a few years doing this, do you know what I mean? We go all over to colleges, we come over to here, we go to all the colleges in London to just target people to rob. And it was like, I do it every single day, you know what I mean? And then we graduated to going to parties and robbing the whole party. Then I'd rob post offices. And then, I don't know how I never got convicted for anything like that. What I did get convicted for was 2 things that I never even did. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
And I went to prison for one of them, you know what I mean? For attempted theft of an unknown person. I was at Oxford Circus Station. A police officer said, "Oi, I saw what you just done." I said, "What?" "I never done anything." He said, "You just tried to take that woman's bag." And I went to the detention centre for that.
No way.
Yeah, and I never done it. But I've done loads of other things, so maybe it balances
itself out. Yeah.
But yeah, that was it, man. I was pretty gruesome. You know what I mean? And pretty, you know, we just rob anyone. You know what I mean? I remember going to coming over to Saxon and Unity up in Upton House at school, and we robbed the whole dance. Everyone put your money in, we just robbed everyone. I remember that just across the road there, they had a big all-day thing at Britannia Leisure Centre, and we smashed up the whole place, robbed everyone, we robbed everyone. And it's like, I look back now and I think, wow, do you know what I mean? We robbed people at Carnival. I remember it's because of us that they shut down. Remember the under the flyover, Mastermind? We were the ones that made them finish it. Because we went there, robbed everyone, sprayed CS gas and ammonia, and they said that was the last year they're ever going to have it under the flyover again. And now I think, oh my God, do you know what I mean?
Even before I knew you as Frost, you had quite an infamous reputation. And it goes back to something I said earlier when I said about within your group, were you one of the leaders?
Yeah.
And then you then said, no, but there was an older group. It sounds to me that by that time, as you've got older, you then became that person.
Yeah. I became that person.
Yeah.
Me and a few, I became that person in our group,
What was the turning point?
We robbed the van full of watches, yeah? I robbed the van full of watches, but this time I always loved music, yeah? Because I always collected music and stuff like that. And this is when I met Bryan, because I tried to sell him a watch, because I robbed
So you didn't know him at that time?
I didn't know Bryan at that time.
You just saw him on the street?
I walked past a pub, and I saw a guy, a dread, in there playing Rare Groove, and I was like, rah, I've got these kind of tunes. And I thought, I wonder if he wants to buy a watch. And I walked in and I said, do you want to buy a watch? And he's like, let me see. And I showed him the watch. And he said, yeah, wait, and I'll buy one after I finish, after I get paid.
Yeah.
And then I sat there and I thought, yeah, we just started talking about music. In the end, he didn't even buy a watch.
Yeah.
And that's how I got to know him. You know what I mean?
So what year and what age were you? If not the year, roughly around how old?
I must have been about 17.
Right.
About 18.
Wow,
About 18.
Okay, really?
About 18 when I met Bryan.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, I was about 18 when I met Bryan.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought that relationship started way later than that.
No, I met Bryan when I was about 18.
Way later than that.
And then, because by that time, I was kind of getting fed up and I wanted to go a different direction in my life. And meeting Bryan was the kind of catalyst for me to do that. Because he said, what, you know all these tunes? He said, you should come on the radio. I was like, on the radio? He said, yeah, you could do a radio show. And I was like, really, me? And I thought, I want to do that. Do you know what I mean? And then he took me to his house and he taught me how to do a radio show. He sat me down and taught me how to do a radio show.
That was the turning point then?
That was the turning point.
That was the turning point.
Bryan G took me to his house and showed me how, because I had all the records, because my uncle that used to be, and plus as well, at that time, I forgot to point out, I was at Africa Centre every Sunday with Jazzy B and Trevor Mad Hatter, as he was known then. So I was like, I'm a student of the Africa Centre. I went there every single Sunday. Do you know what I mean? Because I got fed up with the whole reggae kind of scene and I started going a different way.
So this is all between this 16 and 18 years.
Yeah.
So this is like within a 2-year period of being back in London after boarding school.
Yeah.
You rise up then, you know what I mean, on street robbery.
Street robbery.
And what have you. And you know, like you spend a little bit of time in a detention centre, you come out and you're still in that world.
Yeah, I'm still in that world.
But you am I right saying that while you were out doing the street robbery, you're collecting music by yourself? Are you physically buying the music, or did you just have it around you by virtue of your...
I had it around me.
Okay.
I had it around me. I was very lucky to have this, have thousands of records around me.
Right, so this wasn't a case of you going, you at this point, it wasn't, you didn't have any inspiration to be a DJ at that point or anything like that?
I just had access to all these records.
Okay, go for it.
And it's like, and I was having great knowledge of music because my uncles grew up. I grew up on that 70s sound. I grew up, I was surrounded. I'd go to the park with my mum, and my mum had an afro, and my dad, and they were all like from the Superfly movies. I grew up like that. You understand? So all these music was just, I grew up around it, and it was just there. Do you know what I mean?
And so, tell me how you then got introduced to the Africa Centre, because in my mind, I'm going, for you to be there, that was smooth down there.
Yeah.
That was so that was smooth.
It was smooth. I don't know, it was crazy because...
So I'm like, where did this villain get to go to this place that was so smooth?
Well, my friends Delroy and Jonathan, they were kind of into that vibe, and there was like a Wilf, and they were like, let's go Africa Centre. And I was like, what's Africa Centre? And I went there and I started hearing this music, but then I was like, rah. And then I remember being in there meeting Jazzy, and Jazzy B's like, behave yourself, because he took a shine to me, Jazzy
Because I was going to say that, surely you'd be looking around going, I can eat in here.
Yeah, because listen, I remember robbing someone in there. I remember robbing someone's Rolex in there.
Oh, no.
In the toilet.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying, was it you? I'm like, it wasn't me, Jazzy. Sorry, Jazzy. Yeah. He's saying, it wasn't me, Jazzy. And he's like, he's looking at me funny. You know what I mean? I remember someone went to the toilet and I pulled their arm out, grabbed their watch off and pulled the door, gone. Do you know what I mean? Sorry. You know what I mean? And I'm sure they knew it was me anyway. And him and Trevor Nelson were both looking at me like, I'm sure it was you. I'm saying it wasn't me. But at the time, when people used to come there to misbehave, I used to keep the people away from misbehaving. I'd say, when you come here, you behave yourself, So, and then I started calming down a bit. Because I went there every week, you know what I mean? And then I started calming down. And then I think being around those guys helped me grow up a lot as well. They let me in and say, we're letting you in, but behave, And I was like, I will behave. But I just started behaving myself, you know what I mean? And then, it was just a crazy transition in my life. From street kid, booger, to just other person that just was just developing. Because I just had enough of it. I had enough of that. I just thought, this is not me. I don't want to be robbing people anymore and stabbing people and shooting after people. I don't want to do that anymore, because that's what I was doing on a daily basis. And I just thought, I could offer, I've got so much more to offer than this. And so I went another route in my life, it just happened. And it's, I have to give thanks for meeting Bryan G, because, he was committed to that, you know what I mean? After a while, I got to sit with him and we'd go up in the roof and put the radio station on, and I was like, wow, I was just learning about this whole new world, which excited me, you know what I mean? And and I just kind of just went that way. I kind of left all my friends and just went another way with Bryan and with the radio thing and with, you know what I mean? And then we discovered Acid House. Boom.
That's an amazing story. I mean, just a tiny bit step back. It's not even a step back because it's the same time that you're going Africa Centre. I suspect, even if you don't recognise it now, but I'm quite certain that going there, you also saw a different type of black person. You saw a successful, somebody who's still respected, someone who's still, people say, yo, them man, you know what I mean, and whatever, without having to do any robbery.
Exactly.
And I think that may have been having an impression on you.
Jazzy B, Beres had a great impression on me. He had a lot of time for me. He'd sit me down and talk to me. And Trevor Nelson as well. At the time, he was called Trevor Mad Hatter. They both kind of took a shine to me, and I want to commend them for that. They both kind of think they both saw something different in me, and they both just gave me a lot of advice. They didn't have to. You know what I mean? They didn't have to even let me in, but they both saw a lot of potential in me, and they both, gave me a lot of advice. And you're right, I saw a different kind of black person than someone that could be respected through not
other means,
yeah. So
yeah.
And I think that had and I wanted to be that person. I didn't want to be doing what I was doing.
But you didn't know anything different.
That's all I knew.
You didn't know anything different.
That's all I knew. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything else.
You didn't know anything different.
You know what I mean? That's all I knew. You know.
And so.
And it's crazy because it's like, sorry, it's like, you know, it's like, you know, meeting people like Simon Goff for the first time. Do you know what I mean? Like Bryan taking me to, that time he used to have an office, Secret Promotions on Clerkenwell Road. Do you know what I mean? And I'd go there and, you know, it's, you know, just all these different people. And it's just like, it was like another world. I was like, wow, it was like a whole new world. Do you know what I mean? And it was just crazy. I just did, and I wanted to be part of this new world and leave that other, because it's only going to go one way, you know?
You speak about Africa Centre, then walking past the place and seeing Bryan. And I had asked you, when was the turning point?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It sounds to me that it was if it was a lock unlocking, it was slowly unlocking with at the Africa Centre, and then see it and meeting Bryan was like a half turn of the lock.
Yeah.
With still more to go.
Yeah.
There's still more to go, but that's fascinating because, as I said, I when I first met you and I knew about Bryan, we were already in our 20s and our mid-20s.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to know that you'd known him at 18, do you know what I mean?
Bryan,
he was very, very instrumental in a very serious just a very instrumental person in changing your life.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Bryan, I don't think I'd be sitting here today.
That is a very, very important statement.
If it wasn't for Bryan G, I wouldn't be sitting there today on many, many levels. You know?
Have you ever told him that?
He knows that, man. I told him I love him. He knows that, man. We sit down, he knows I love him, man. Like a brother. He's like my big brother. You know, I'll give you a joke. There's times I went down there, I went down, I was angry, I got a big knife like this. I'm like, you wait till I fucking see that guy. And he just confiscated the knife off me. Like a teacher, I'm taking this and put it in the fucking drawer, bruv. Yeah? I'm sure he's still got the knife there now. Man confiscated the knife, you know, bruv. So give me this, Nigel. And just took it straight face and just opened the drawer and put it in the drawer like he's in school. I didn't even ask him back for it. Excuse me, can I have my knife, sir? I'm sure he's still got the knife now. Yeah?
So you meet Bryan and he is introducing you now to the world of music. You've got your own access to music, him being in music, and then you then entering this new world at the very, taking baby steps in it. Walk me through how that kind of like grew into, because clearly that was the beginning of Jumpin Jack Frost.
Well, at first, as I said, Bryan took me to his house, showed me how to do a radio show. Because I first done it.
So you're not on air or anything. He's just teaching you.
Just how to do it.
That's amazing.
He just taught me how to do a radio show. This is how you do it. And I got a show on this radio station called Quest, which was based in Balham. But I never actually got to do a show on there because they shut down. And then they were taken over by a guy called Howard Hill, who set up a radio station called Passion Radio in Brixton. Passion Radio went on to be a massive pirate station. And I was on there with Bryan, and I kind of cut my teeth there. I learned a lot there, like how to do radio stuff, and then I was there for a while. And at the time we were playing that rare groove, because I like stuff like Eddie Harris, Larry Young, Simon D, The Meters. I was a proper 70s funk rare groove guy. But then one day we went to Clink Street and we discovered Acid House. And boom, you know, from then we never turned back, you know.
Was Clink Street and you did that discovery, how did that come about? Like, so you imagine you're, clearly now we're in the late 80s now.
Yeah.
You're right, being in the late 80s.
This is 1987.
Yeah, being 1987. My maths isn't that great off the top of my head, but still some years have passed since this 18-year-old boy.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's this window between there.
I've gone a few years at this radio station, just playing that on the radio, and my daughter's born by that time, and I was just, you know, I didn't have a job, so I was kind of surviving, you know what I mean? But yeah, and I was just into this music. I don't know how I was living, but I was surviving, do you know what I mean? But I wasn't really committing any crime. I think I might be selling hash or something like that. I was robbing people. I was still robbing people. Sorry, that's a lie. I was going down and robbing people that sold drugs. I'd go and rob them. Do you know what I mean? Because I still had a gun and all that, so I'd go and rob. If you sold hash, I'd rob you. Sorry, I forgot about that part of my life. Robbing drug dealers. Yeah, I did. I'd done that for a little while, and then we got into the acid house thing. And then from there, it was just kind of not plain sailing, because we got into the acid house thing, and then I remember Pete and Tank started Car Wash, and me, Bryan, Pete Stewart, and that's when I first met Groove Rider and Fabio. I'd known Fabio Fitzroy for a long time because we grew up together. I'd known Fitzroy since I was 8, so Fitzroy, you know what I mean? And Fitzroy was a few years older than me, so. You know, I was always younger, so, you know, we knew each other. But it's the first time I'd kind of bucked up on him as a DJ, do you know what I mean? And Colin Dell, I knew Colin Dell as well, all growing up, because we all grew up in the same area. So me, Bri, Pete, Fab and Groove played at the Car Wash at the weekends, and that was a spot, the acid house spot, and there's a lot of people started to come through there and get to know me.
And where were you getting your records from at that time then? And it sounds like in the timeline that you're giving me just then, Bryan doesn't seem to be within that timeline.
Yeah, Bryan's there all the way.
Right, okay.
Bryan's always been very humble and very quiet.
Right, okay.
Bryan's just very calm. He's still the same now, you know.
Yeah,
he's just always been just there. I was more like, do you know what I mean? And Bryan's just always been there, just calm, humble. At that time, we were going around to all the record companies, getting these promos. So we do a full circle. We stop at Simon Goff's. We stop at Virgin, where Lisa Loud worked. Yeah? And we talk about all these people that are still my friends now, Simon, Lisa. I'd stop at Black Market to buy my records. I'll stop at City Sounds to get ripped off by Dave. Yeah? Not ripped off, but he showed me everything he had there, right? And we'd just stop at all these places. I'd stop off at Republic Records, where Guy Carlton and Dave Lee worked. Dave Lee is now Joey Negro. He was Joey Negro, but he's back to Dave Lee. So, you know, I was getting a lot of free promos, but we're spending a lot of money down at Black Market Records and City Sounds. And I was totally funding it from my whatever shenanigans I was keeping up with on the streets. Do you know what I mean? So I spent a lot of money on records.
Yeah. I mean, that era you're talking about there obviously is like the late 80s, and that's kind of where although I knew you, I wouldn't say I knew you when you were coming to the school. I didn't know you. I don't even think I knew you as Samantha's brother then, either.
Because your mum used to look after my sister, right?
That's right, yeah. You know, but I get a sense that was a bit later. That was a bit later. I think so. My timing and whatever isn't that great.
Because I used to go to Hackney to visit my sister when she lives on Cecilia Road.
Right,
which is at the top of Sandringham Road.
That's right, yeah.
That's before it all turned into like a... One time I went up there, it looked like a demolished the whole thing.
Yeah. So I think that was a bit later when Samantha, my mum was staying at my mum's, and that's when I more kind of got to know that you were her brother then. But before then, I didn't really know you like that. Do you know what I mean? I didn't really know you in that way. And even then, I didn't really know you that well. I started to, know of you. I started to know of you more from these early acid house days. Though I remember once at one rave, just to say, I remember you were very rude to me one time. And I went, and I weren't having none of it.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Damn, I can't remember. I don't remember that.
No, I was playing somewhere, so it must have been a bit further down. I think it was a telepathy at Marshgate Lane. And then he was like, and I was like, and I just firmed. Wow. And I'm like, I'm not moving. I'm not moving. I think that for you also said to you, oh, right, because you have respect for people who do things like that.
And plus, I remember the first time me seeing you playing was at that time down Vox, right near Car Wash, opposite. There was like some DJ competition thing, and that little boy was scratching.
Yeah.
And I remember you was there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how it came.
Crazy, yeah.
So here you are now. You've done your radio stint with passion. You're building your name and your reputation there. You move on to Clink Street, and then from Clink Street.
No, I never played at Clink Street.
Oh, you just went there. Okay.
Clink Street. I went to Clink Street where Colin Favour played, Colin Hudd, and that's where we looked and went, wow. And Eddie Richards, who turned out to be a very good friend of mine in the end. Eddie Richards just got very instrumental on moving me on. So, yeah, Clink Street was like, wow.
Another turning point.
We discovered it here, do you know what I mean? And then me and Bryan just started playing this acid house on the radio, and the people at the radio station weren't ready for it. They were like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
They're like, can't you not play like what happened to the nice music that you lot was playing?
That's interesting because that's almost an identical parallel to what Fabio said.
Yeah, because Fabio was in phase one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden, just like that, we start playing his music and saying, oh, what the fuck, man? Because Passion was like a reggae station. And the people that say, listen, they're going, the music, nice music. What happened to the nice music you was playing before, man? What's all this mad music you're playing? Dance with the devil and them times. So, you're playing some devil music, man. So listen, we was doing our thing. Yeah. But we were committed. You know what I mean? We were committed.
So then walk me through the next phase then. You're on the radio, you're committed now to Acid House. And for me, I always kind of regarded you guys as early adopters to this whole thing. You know, certainly I recall your name being on flyers and whatever in that era, way before I had any kind of aspirations of being a acid house DJ or anything like that. So you walk me through that kind of era for you.
I think from the car wash days, somehow I ended up at MASH on Oxford Street. So I think I started off doing security there. Like, you know what I mean? It's helping them out with some security. And then somehow we ended up getting the decks in there and playing music. Because it was acid, innit? Acid house. There's like an acid house shop.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And so we ended up kind of playing in there on Saturdays. And then we ended up opening a record shop in there. Because people used to just come down to MASH to get the tickets. Right, we sell tickets in there and we sell records. Me and Bryan had a record shop in there. And a lot of people used to come down there and get to know us through there. So I got a lot of people come there and book me to play at parties. And at that time, I think I started playing at the Fridge on Thursdays with Eddie Richards and Paul Trouble Anderson. So when I started doing that, Eddie Richards signed me up to his agency called Dynamics, which I think was one of the first big DJ agencies in the country. So I started getting a lot of work abroad and just doing a lot of stuff. And I was very lucky, you know what I mean? I was very, very fortunate at the time because I was no better than anyone else. Do you know what I mean? We were all the same. But I was just very fortunate and lucky that I met Eddie, and Eddie just thought, I like this guy. I'm going to put him on the agency, and you know what I mean?
And
obviously,
you took that opportunity and ran with it.
And I just ran with it, you know what I mean? Which is, I was very fortunate.
You say you were at Dynamics and whatever. I remember that vaguely. I mean, for me, this is where I kind of like really kind of got, we knew each other a lot more, which was when you were at Groove Connection.
Yeah.
You know, I had already become a part of that scene by that time and what have you. And we'd become quite close as well and what have you. But I also, speaking frankly, you know what I mean, I also remember you were still being challenged by your old life.
Oh, yeah. That never went away. It's always been there. There's always something, you know what I mean? Like, I remember, like, when we made the transition, I made it because I'd kind of left Dynamics. It was no like thing. It was just a natural progression because I'd started getting more into like this is when we were the birth of jungle drum and bass, and I started kind of going away from the direction I was in before with Mr. C and Eddie Richards. So they kind of carried on that path, and Carl Cox. They carried on in that path, and I'd come a different way now with Fabio, Groove, Bry, Mickey, and Frankie Valentine.
Frankie as well, yeah.
And Frankie Valentine. So we kind of went a different direction. And there was always something. There was always something trying to pull me back.
I think as well at that time, I mean, not so much in the late 80s, but by this time we're in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And the early 90s was, I think it was a very transitional stage. I mean, I speak for myself, but I think I can speak for you as well. It's like a very transitional stage again.
Yeah.
So you imagine like you've got this sort of like, you know, transitional stage where you meet Bryan and he's in the music business and da-da-da and this, that and the other. By that time, you know, Jazzy's on telly now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He's on telly. He's like I think it was #1 in the charts or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, you go a year or so after that, then you got Rebel and that in the charts.
Yeah.
So now you've got all of these sort of people who are kind of like us.
Yeah.
In the charts.
Yeah.
Giving us we're earning a bit of money as well for the first time legitimately.
I'm feeling fine. I'm getting good money.
You're starting to feel yourself a bit.
I'm starting to feel fine.
Yeah,
I'm playing over Europe. I'm in Europe. I'm wearing nice clothes. I'm giving my mum money. I've got my daughter. I'm starting to step up a bit. I'm feeling I'm feeling good about myself.
And I suppose the point I'm kind of like leaning into was that, and why I think there's maybe some parallel here, is that even with that, but with this life that came up until that point, it was hard to shake it off.
Yeah.
And so now it's like living. It's like the earliest flossing, really. Do you know what I mean? It's the earliest versions of flossing, and I remember, to speak for myself again, do you know what I mean? Kind of like leaning into that a bit. And
I had the chains and everything.
Yeah,
And
leaning into
I had like
that.
Rolex necklace. I had it all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so I just wondered, kind of like, Nige, how you felt about kind of speaking about some of the things that kind of like were happening around that time, because, you know, for those who don't know, if you don't know, I don't know where you've been living, if you don't know, you know what I mean, you've got your book, which is Big Bag and Heavy, which, you know what I mean, I've read some of that book, you know what I mean, and it's quite graphic and open about the things that you went through, do you know what I mean, during those times, and it's unfortunate somehow that a lot of people, they know these books are out, they don't read it, but I just wanted to kind of go through some of that, do you know what I mean? You're an accomplished author.
Yeah.
This is an autobiography about your life, and I remember coming to visit you in prison. Wow, we were kind of not supposed to be at that time.
Yeah.
Talk me through that period, because I remember that being a challenging period for you, right in the middle while everything was going on.
What happened? What happened? I had a gun in my house, and a fucking 9mm with a silencer in my house. I always had a gun, always. But
I remember it.
Yeah, you remember?
It was like a like from James Bond.
Oh yeah, the little one, innit? Yeah. I always had one.
I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing.
Yeah.
Kids, if you're watching this is not funny.
Yeah.
All right?
It's like a little it's like a 9mm, but it's like a small, it's called a Velcro.
But at the time, we were young.
I always had one. I've always had one. I've always had one or two. Yeah, always. Somehow, I don't know what happened. I think what happened one day, the police, because I lived in a really posh street, and I was young at that time. Remember, you used to come to my house.
Yeah, I remember.
It was a really posh flat. I just wanted to live, and I lived somewhere really posh. And I remember the police coming around one day and saying, "Oh, can we mark your?" Because they were doing this. Can we mark your stuff? And I was like, "No, I don't want you to mark nothing." But I think that I don't know what they must have thought I was a thief. I don't know what they thought. But they raided my house. Do you know what I mean? And they found this gun. I didn't tell anyone nothing about it for ages. And I went to prison for that, yeah.
I remember,
I was in jail for that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Not for long, it's funny, I don't know how. I mean, I kind of came up with something or whatever, and I wasn't in jail for long. But that was scary, because I thought, oh my God, everything I worked for is gone.
That's right.
And it's crazy because I remember, right? I had a show on Kiss at the time, and there was a few of us sharing the show. So I'd do a show, and I had to wait 8 weeks to do my next show. I remember going to do my show, going to prison, and then coming out 2 days before the next show.
That's weird that happened like that. Yeah.
Crazy.
You know? So I mean, it's a good point, a segue actually, because you were one of the earliest people to go on Kiss.
Yeah.
I don't remember it being this 8-week break. I remember...
there was a few of us on there.
Right,
Me, Bookham, Hype, Groove, Fabio. We had to share the show.
And was that all the time? Was it like that all the time?
It started off like that, and then it ended up in the end with just me and Hype.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's how it ended up in the end.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because that's how...
Because then One Extra started, Radio 1, and then it just, people went off their different ways, but it all started at Kiss.
Yeah, it started there, yeah. And so I want to go back to like the earliest times of Groove Connection, that iconic photo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're the third of that. Tell a lie. Yeah, well, you are the third within the photo, but by my understanding, Rap was on the agency at the same time.
No.
She wasn't?
No, not at that time.
Right, okay, right. That's interesting, because I think Fabio seemed to think she was.
No, she wasn't.
She wasn't, yeah, she wasn't. Okay.
I think they called us the famous five.
I don't know, but that, I tell you one thing's for certain. I know that alongside myself, there were a lot of people with that imagery of that picture, that was like the elite sort of agency.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And
it was the only person missing from that photograph at that time was Frankie Valentine.
Right, okay. And he was due to be in it because he was on the agency.
Yeah.
And isn't that ironic how he wasn't on there and he was also the only one that didn't go down the jungle path?
Yeah, because what happened, it all started off with an agency called DJs United that was based in Ladbroke Grove. And Frankie was instrumental in starting that. And something went wrong, and then Sarah decided she's just going to do it herself. And so she had all the boys, the South London boys, which were all South London at the time. I don't think Frankie was from South London, but Frankie came with us. And she set up an office in Brixton, and that's how we went from DJs United to Groove Connection. We're just a small, because before there was like so many DJs that were meant to be at DJs United. It never got off the ground. I don't think I had one booking from there. I don't think there's a lot of infighting and that. And I think Sarah took that model and just shrunk it all down and just came back to South and started it off. And then we went with her. And at that time, I was still at Dynamix. So I was kind of had one foot there, but where I was going musically more suited what way I was going with Groove Connection with Sarah and Fabio, Groove, Bryan and Mickey.
Yeah, it was a very it's an iconic picture. I've seen it loads of times on different people's fridge and everything. Do you know what I mean? You know,
what people got in their fridge and all that? Oh wow.
Yeah. I've seen it on someone's
Maybe
fridge.
I should put it on my fridge as well.
Yeah, I've seen it on someone's fridge and everything.
I think that's a good idea. I'm going to get it made into a fridge magnet because I've got a large collection of fridge magnets from everywhere I've been. And the whole fridge is covered. So I think I'm going to get that made into a fridge magnet. Definitely, it's a good idea.
You know, but to me, that kind of, I never really associated that with acid house. I associated that, and certainly my memory of it as the very early stages of jungle.
Yeah.
And what a great time that was, you know what I mean, for everybody involved, you know? And that it was while it was true that Groove Connection and you guys had quite a foothold, there were these other agencies coming up and other DJs coming up and making their own way. Yeah. But it wasn't long before we started to look at other areas of interest. And I think for you, by that time, we were like very close, you know what I mean? And I think it was roughly simultaneously, we were kind of like looking at London Something and V Recordings. Yeah. Because I do remember you saying to me about the V-head. This is before the V-head even existed. Tell me about that. Because this is the inception of V.
So, no, because a lot of people don't know, the original record, V Records, was just a V.
I remember it because it was just a blue V.
Yeah, and we had a green one, which is fresh.
I only saw the blue one.
We had the first one was the Deceivers.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Brian would know at the top of his head. But it was, I think the first four were just a V.
Yeah.
And then, when I done Leviticus, and we needed a logo for Leviticus, yeah? Because first of all, it was just on Philly Blunt, which was our sister label to V, a subsidiary to V. But then we signed Leviticus to London Records, and we needed a logo for it. But by this time, I was in prison. When we did all the artwork, no one knew, but I was in jail. At uni, I was in jail.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I was in jail. I remember Rap used to write me letters, because she was a good friend of mine. And I remember when I came out, Groove actually came and picked me up from the prison and down in Kent. So we needed a logo. But so I was talking to Bryan on the phone in the Brixton prison and trying to describe how I'd like this logo. So I said, I want like a Versace head, but with a black person's face. And he just took my interpretation of what I said and went to the art, and that's how the V logo came out. And that was originally for Leviticus. But then we decided we liked the logo and we just changed, and then that became the V Recordings logo. Do you know what I mean? And that's how that logo came about. Yeah. Originally, it had like another star in the head, but we took that star out and it was just left with the face.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Okay. You know, I think the V one that I had was when Dillinger was going under a different name. Oh, I can't remember the name of it now. Wicked tune, though. It's been under so many different names anyway, but it was a Dillinger tune for sure. And yeah, and I remember that time going back a little bit where we were speaking about how, you know, like, it was a moment, you know what I mean? It was a moment for a lot of people earning, you know, disposable income, good disposable income, looking at other areas of interest, music production, record labels. And so you kind of like, I remember you had your office in Brixton.
Yeah.
And, you know what I mean? You know, like, and I had my office. We used to keep on going back and forth.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Ronnie and them lot come on the scene. And
they came on the scene. That's how we started the label.
Right, okay.
Because they came on the scene.
Right, okay.
So originally, Bryan G worked at Rhythm King, which is a subsidiary of Mute. Bryan was always been very industry savvy, yeah. Like he was very close with Guy Carlton, rest in peace, Guy, and Dave Lee, who was Joey Negro, and Simon Goff. We were all very close to Simon, yourself included. Yeah. Because Simon was my manager. I'm sure he was Rebel's manager at the time.
Manager as well,
and he was kind of your manager as well.
Right, yeah.
So Simon has always been an ever-present. Simon Goff has been an ever-present with
big
all
up
of us.
Simon Goff. Big up to Simon. He did a lot, yeah.
So Bryan
and Ragga Twins as well.
And Ragga Twins as well. So Simon has always been. Even now, if I want to get something done, I'll call Simon. Now, because Simon now works with Giles Peterson.
That's right. Yeah.
So anyway, Bryan had got this job at Mute. At the time, they were based on Harrow Road. So Bryan was there and he was just learning it, but Mute went bust. They went bust. And I remember at the time, because Bryan was very instrumental in bringing R&S Records to Mute with Joey Beltram and Moby.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
Bryan signed Moby.
Right, okay.
And Bryan signed Moby to Mute. Yeah, a lot of people don't know this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Beltram, and in fact, the whole R&S thing. And I think Bryan kind of introduced Dave Angel to R&S, to Renard and those in Belgium. So Bryan was very instrumental in that early Euro kind of sound. All that stuff like Outlander, Energy Flash. We had all those stuff in acetates because we were kind of in contact with them, and this is all down to Bryan. So Bryan was always been there in the background, pulling these strings, but on a bigger industry level, yeah? When Mute went bust, there was a bunch of demos in the office, and Bryan took the demos with him and started listening to them, and he called me up and said, Nigel, you have to come and listen to this music. I think I've found some new artists that are kind of just, you know what I mean? So he kept going on and on about it, and I went down there, and there's these demos from Crust and Ronnie. So we sat there and we was just like, wow, this is incredible. So Bryan got in contact with them. Originally, he got in contact with Crust. Now, Crust used to be in a group called the Fresh Four.
That's right, yeah.
And I think they were kind of connected with Smith and Mighty and all that as well.
Yeah, because that was this Bristol kind of like
Bristol thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we went down to Bristol and we met the guys and we said we want to start a label. At this time, I had no idea about anything, but Bryan took the lead on it. Bryan knew exactly what he was doing. I just went along with it, and I was just a partner. I put the money towards it, and we both set it up together. But Bryan was always instrumental in the decisions, in what we should do, in how it should be done. I was very good at marketing stuff, like the logos, the names, and stuff like that. I was very good at that. But getting the job done, Bryan G. Me, I'd have 100 million great ideas every day.
Yeah.
But if left to my own devices, nothing would get done. You understand?
Yeah.
But Bryan, I'd have an idea, and then about 3 months later, I've forgotten about the idea, and he's implementing it.
And he would be able to distill everything that you're kind of like coming out of the top of your
I'm
head.
just like,
and he'd go like, and he'd filter that down to this, and this.
And sometimes you just listen to me and not say anything, and just take what he wants to take from it.
I mean, it's interesting because I always, it's funny you say that, and it's commendable you say that, because I've always thought that it was the difference in personality that made V what it was.
And you know that my birthday's May the 29th and Bryan's is May the 30th. It's crazy.
Yeah. And there was something about that okay, yes, you know what I mean, it's the music as well. You're going to go on to tell me more about Crust and Ronnie. But you could see that there's like an energy here that wouldn't have been necessarily there if it wasn't for both of you.
Maybe, because, you know, I was very, and Bryan was very calm.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I'd just be like, listen, you know what? And Bryan's just like, sit down and just be calm.
Yeah.
As I said to you before, I went there one time and I had a massive knife. It was like a sharp knife. And it had all these, it looked like a jagged edge. And Bryan just said, Nigel, give me the knife. And just put it in the drawer like a school teacher. Up to now, I swear to God, he must still have that knife. Yeah? If I mentioned it to him, he just has a little smile in his face. Very wise.
Yeah. So you listen to the records, the demos, sorry. You know that Crust is on there. You know that Ronnie's on there. Walk me through that.
And then after, then we go down there and they said, oh, there's more of us. We've got another friend called Di and another one called Suv. And we're like, what? So we start listening to all this music, and we go back to London with all these things, and I'm like, wow, we want to cut all these tunes. So the first dub plates we actually cut them off cassettes, which is crazy. Do you know what I mean? We went to Music House, I went there, I must have cut about 20 plates off these cassettes. And I remember playing at Trouble Gathering at Universe, and I played a whole set of Ronnie and Crust and the boys on these plates that I cut off acetate. And I think everyone's just like, what a set that was. And I was just literally testing out all these new tunes. And I think I had Crust and Ronnie with me. And that was the first time they said, it's the first time we've ever heard our music played out. Was at Tribal Gathering. And that was, I've never listened back to the set, but everyone was like, wow, what a set. Because I literally just done a whole dub plate set of all their tunes. And it was just a whole new sound at the time. Yeah, that was a groundbreaking time. Very, very, like, it was a pivotal, monumental moment and a change, you know?
When would you say the label started? What year would you put that
1990, end of 92, end of 92.
That early? You sure?
Yeah, end of 92.
End of 92,
End of 92.
Okay. So if you consider that, end of 92, that started. For me, I got a whiff of the Bristol phenomenon later than 92. I think that it was not only groundbreaking, I don't think there was anybody at that time that could keep up with them.
They had a phenomenal work rate.
It was like, they were so prolific.
Yeah.
You know, they were so prolific. Like, you imagine you got like these 3 or 4 producers banging out records daily. It was like, you know something, they're onto something here. And that obviously grew into what we later coined, or what they later coined as Full Cycle, and helped steer your label into sort of like legendary status then. But along with that, it also started to reach the wider industry. So this is now not just within the scope of jungle and drum and bass. This is now going just above that now, if not quite a bit above that. Tell me about that.
Well, I don't know. I think there was such a range and there was such a volume of music that the boys were producing at that time. We just couldn't put it all out. Do you know what I mean? And they all pushed each other to become better and better and better. Do you know what I mean? And I think a massive turning point was when Ronnie done It's a Jazz Thing, the original version of it. And I remember he didn't want to put it out. He's like, nah, we can't put this out. We can't put this out. Because me and Ronnie used to kind of knock heads a lot over our opinions. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, listen, we're putting this out. I like it. We like it. He's like, no, this is not what's doing it out there. And we're like, listen, we say what's doing it out there. We don't follow what's going on. we say this is what our label is. This is our sound, and we like that record. He said, but there's nothing like it. I said, exactly. Do you know what I mean? And if my memory serves me right, I think that record was the one that got him the deal at Talking Loud in the end. Do you know what I mean? It's not very often that I got involved in the actual signing of records. I left that to Bryan. I think only It's a Jazz Thing I insisted on, and Function by Ed Rush and Optical, which I signed on the spot. Other than that, Bryan signed everything else. Right. And the Brazil EP, that was my little baby. Do you know what I mean? That I wanted to kind of have this jazz kind of South American cha-cha Latin thing going on. Those 3 things I was really instrumental on. Everything else, Bryan was dealt with it all.
Yeah. I remember when Ronnie got signed to, or that record got signed to Talking Loud. And I also remember the moment when the Mobos got involved.
Yeah.
And I think for everybody, I mean, there's one thing Goldie getting a Mobo, but I think that Goldie was you know what I mean? He'll agree with me, you know what I mean? He was a media darling. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You know, like, he was everything that the media could ask for.
Yeah.
In an artist. Talented, he had his teeth, he had this, you know what I mean? The models, everything. But, and he was still part of he was essentially exactly the same as everybody else.
When Goldie came along, I remember when I first heard Terminator, it just blew my mind. Do you know what I mean? And remember, Goldie's an artist, first and foremost. And he brought art to this music and character and a vision, it wasn't faceless anymore. There was a face.
Yeah, and this is the point I'm making.
But he was underground as fuck.
Yeah, and it's the point I'm making.
He was like, you know,
he was still one of us.
He's still one of us. So, I remember once standing outside Black Market, and I remember someone looking at him, and he's like, "What are you looking at?" I'm like, "You can't say that." He's like, "He's recognised you. You're Goldie." He's like, "Oh yeah." You know what I mean? It's like sometimes he kind of forgot who he was.
His position. Yeah. And so you consider that. Then, and him getting his Mobo, but then you guys getting yours.
Yeah.
And for me, I felt that, I think that in a way was even more sort of like...
I don't think we won a Mobo. We were nominated.
It was nomination.
Right, Big Bad and Heavy Leviticus was nominated.
Right.
I don't think we won.
No, I could have swore Ronnie and them lot went up and got a Mobo.
No, you know what? We did.
Yes.
We did. But you know what it was? I think we was away on tour.
Yeah.
And Shirley collected it.
Right, okay.
Shirley collected it. Shirley collected the Mobo for us.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And you consider that, to me, it was like... It was an instrumental moment in time because of the fact that Jungle was being recognised not necessarily just because some might have alluded to the fact that, it was just because it was Goldie. I wouldn't have. I mean, I would have said it was because of his album.
Yeah.
It was
a
clear.
Masterpiece. A masterpiece.
Yeah.
Album.
But it was clear with Full Cycle that this is for Jungle. And so during that period of the Full Cycle, I'm going to call it the Full Cycle phenomenon. You know, there were like these world tours, etc., etc. I couldn't remember which one came first. It's like the chicken and the egg situation. I know the Mobo things happened, but I couldn't remember whether it was the Mobos, then the Mercury Prize, then the world tours.
No,
whether it was the world tours, the Mobo.
No, it was the Mobos nominations.
Right, the Mobos nominations. Yeah,
and then we all were invited after the Represent album came out. We were all invited to this award ceremony called the Mercury Music Prize. I'd never heard of it in my life. But all I knew is that it was at the Grosvenor House Hotel, and we were asked to all dress smartly because it was a very prestigious event. I was like, okay, no problem. I said, what are the nominations? I looked at the nominations, I was like, wow, this is serious.
Give me some examples.
Prodigy, Beth Orphan, Chemical Brothers.
Well, already...
These were the nominations
levels,
that night. Yeah. So we went there and Represent won. So obviously, and I remember that night because we all left the Grosvenor and it was a Thursday. So by the time we got to Bar Rumba, it was buzzing because everyone was like, whoa! So that was a party,
Yeah.
And then from there came the world tours. Because before that, we'd already had inroads into America because we were signed to a label called Ultra, just V, who put out the Planet V album. The V Classics album was us. That's the one with the five vinyls. But the Planet V album was put out in America as well. A guy called Patrick Moxie, who ran a label called Ultra. And he also ran a hip-hop label called Payback, which had Guru and all that. So we were kind of in New York working. We had a press guy there called Gamal, who was really great at his job. We were in Rolling Stone magazine. And we had a residency once a month at a club called Twilo, which was the biggest club in New York at the time. It used to be called the Sound Factory. So we'd fly to New York once a month to play this club. Then I'd fly.
I remember that period as well. Yeah.
Then I'd fly from New York to Toronto to play Industry as well. And then sometimes I'd fly from Toronto to Los Angeles to play at the Viper Rooms, which is Johnny Depp's club.
Yeah,
so
I remember that period.
One point I had 3 residencies, New York, Toronto and LA. Phenomenal times.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that period.
Yeah, phenomenal times. And so that was a really, really, really just like mind-blowing times because like once a month I was in New York, Toronto and LA.
One thing about doing these podcasts which really helps me, it helps me remember stuff that I've forgotten.
Yeah.
And so when I'm hearing you say the word Twilo, when I'm hearing you say, what's the club in New York?
Twilo.
No, the one in Viper Rooms. Yeah. I don't know about the Toronto one. But
Industry.
But I remember those two. And I remember you travelling like that. Do you know what I mean?
It's like literally every month.
Yeah, I remember that.
Like,
and I'd forgotten about it.
Every month.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And we brought, it was phenomenal times, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was proper styling it. You understand?
Yeah. You know, let's fast forward a bit. You know what I mean? You've moved on. You've got like V Recordings is like really kind of like a staple now. You know what I mean? Everybody knows about that and what have you. And then you still are kind of like the person who you are and who you've become, you know what I mean, and whatever. There's still things in your past that are still kind of like reaching in, do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
And trying its best to undermine the good work then, you know what I mean, and I know everything you've achieved so far. So tell me if you like to...
I ended up like flipping, still getting into gang fights, still having arguments.
In fact, before we go any further, Goldie said to ask you about a time when you lot were in a tree somewhere in he said if you're going to interview him, ask him about that.
I'm going to leave some of it in the cutting room floor.
Leave some of it in the cutting room floor, yeah.
Basically, some yardies had broke into his house when he lived up in Swiss Cottage. And he spoke to me and I was like, what? So I went up there, I had my gun on me, and he's like, what the fuck? And I'm like, nah, we're not getting it. So we found them. And I remember one of them jumped over the balcony. I went in the house, and we retrieved the stuff.
Yeah.
We'll
move on.
We retrieved the stolen goods.
Yeah, and so you were saying, or I was saying, you know, like these kind of like old sort of like things were still trying to come in and undermine the work that you'd done. Tell me a bit. And
then I think after as well, because you know I'd never really been into drugs. Never. But then I just developed this love of cocaine. And it went a little bit too far. And I fucking ended up smoking crack. I ended up spending money from my fucking label. I went through maybe a crazy period of just under a year where I just fucking went nuts. And I just, you know what I mean? I thought I nearly threw everything up. So I had to take myself out of the scene and I went to put myself into rehab. And I stayed in there for 4.5 months. It was difficult, and I just got rid of that. It was just literally like a crazy 8-month period. Because before that, I was never really into drugs. Do you know what I mean? And it took a lot of time to build back up people's trust again and to be accepted again, because I literally had to come back with my tail between my legs, mate. Because I just literally just lost the plot. You know what I mean? You know, and people looking at you funny, and everyone knew. It was horrible. Do you know what I mean? But it's built. It's like strength for character. That was a really dark part of my life, because I thought, my God, I've gone from this to this. Do you know what I mean? So I had to rebuild that trust with my business partner, with my family, with friends, with everyone. I had to rebuild this thing again, which took a while, but I was determined to do it. I never took that drug again. Do you know what I mean? I never ever smoked crack again. Do you know what I mean? But I just still took cocaine. Do you know what I mean? I still like. Do you know what I mean? And it's only quite recently where I've kind of just not really got involved in all that. Do you know what I mean? I still, you know what I mean? It's something that I have to fight for the rest of my life. It's like you're never completely over it.
Because that's what they say. They say that you're always in recovery.
Always.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
You're forever in
and
recovery.
sometimes I have days when I fucking fall off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those days are more
less.
I've got now my life's a lot better, a lot more calm.
It's very honest and
I'm just saying,
I mean, what would you say to a young or maybe not young, you know what I mean, to anybody who's kind of going through the same challenges?
Just, you know, stay out. Just if you can, don't get involved in that. You know, it all starts off fun and games, but it will get you in the end. You know what I mean? It will get you. And being in this business, it's going to be there. You're going to be tempted. You're going to have people that try, you know, you've got people that will try and bring you down on purpose. You've got people, it all seems like fun and games, but just try your best to stay away from it because you can't win in the end. In the end, it will get you.
I've seen that you've been an advocate as well for kind of like supporting people within, some of them by virtue of drugs, but others just generally with mental health issues and challenges.
Yeah,
like
because
that.
I suffer myself from depression still to now. Sometimes I can wake up and I'm just depressed. I don't even know why. I have a therapist. I go to therapy and I've thought to myself if I can help other people. And it's funny how it started because I first spoke about it in my book and a lot of people came up to me and they were like, thank you so much for being so honest about your struggles with your mental health. And I think that I got the most satisfaction out of everything in the book from people coming to me and saying, thanking me for that. And from then I started getting involved with like various charities and doing talks and speaking at events and stuff like that. And I've been known I'm quite known for being an advocate for mental health and speak. I speak at quite big things, and I've been asked to go to different places, sometimes go abroad to talk about mental health, and I feel it's quite a privilege for me to do that. If I can help anyone at all, do you know what I mean? Because you know, anything like sometimes I just like I could be on top of the world, and then the next minute, boom, I'm not, and it's just
I just don't know where it comes from.
I don't even know where it comes from. Do you know what I mean? But with the help of therapy and with the help of friends and people that understand me, again, Bryan, just like, come on, Nige. He just says, come on, I'll come and get you. It's just, what a guy. Come on, I'm coming to get you. Or come on, we're going to do this today. What a guy. Sometimes I don't know what I'd do without him, man.
Yeah. And many people are going to listen to this. They're going to be like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
They're going to go, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
They're going to know, I didn't know that. Because when you think about it, you've always been there in this scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your career has always been like a staple name on flyers and whatever. So
very fortunate. Recently I saw Flux on one of your podcasts, and I know he's had his struggles, so I know he won't mind me saying that there's been times that we haven't seen eye to eye over certain things, but now I speak to him quite regularly to check on him to make sure that he's okay. Do you know what I mean? And he's always saying thank you, and I'm like, man, you're my friend, you know? So I ring him sometimes and just talk to him about his struggles and try to help him through and just give him, you know what I mean? And and I'm really proud of the effort that he's making to stay in control of his demons.
Yeah. You know, Nigel, listening to you say that about Flux and you calling him, reminds me of a conversation I had with an artist. This artist is as big an artist as them as they are in our scene. And I wanted to get him on the podcast. In my opinion, he's a bit of although he's out in the public domain, he's actually a bit of an enigma. Do you know what I mean? And why do I say that? It's because he keeps himself very much to himself. But what I realised was that he wanted someone to speak to. And so those calls, and why am I bringing this up? Because of what you said about Flux.
Yeah.
It can really help change someone's mood, even if it's just for that day.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's like, I have a really good close relationship with Tony from hospital. And a lot of people will not know that.
Yeah.
We have a
I didn't know that either.
We have a very close relationship. He comes to my house.
Yeah.
We sit down, we talk about life, talk about our problems. And we have a very, very close relationship. We're very close friends.
And this is why, I mean, I don't want to get too sentimental here, but having all of us grown up with each other, we are able to now lean on each other.
Yeah. I think it's very important.
Yeah, and I think that is a really important thing to be able to do because these are people who have gone through similar...
We're people.
We've gone through similar things. We've all had children. We've all been in the industry. We've all had challenges with drugs or alcohol or women or whatever it might be that has tried to, you know what I mean, pull us down and take us in other directions. Yeah. But I think that network that has been formed, like forged in music over the last sort of like 30 plus years, it can be really, really useful and comes back to something we both said very early on. Sorry to go on a bit, but we learned a lot only in the last few years.
Yeah, definitely.
This period where you start to dawn on you.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Maybe I won't do it like that anymore.
Yeah. You know, I like myself better now, and I think people like me better, and I'm more accessible to people and more open to people. I think before a lot of people were a bit standoffish with me, and I think I've grown a lot, and I'm more accommodating, you know. And I've always been the same. I'm a nice person. Do you know what I mean? And I think people are kind of seeing that more about me now, rather than before being this ogre or a bad guy, which I don't want to be. When I was growing up, that's all I knew. I didn't know anything else. But now I know better. I try to do better, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to send a big shout out to Fabio and Groove Rider, who have both always been such a support for me. They just talk to me honestly, you know what I mean? Both of them, just really honest, like, you know, when I was going through all that issue, both of them were on the phone to me like, mate, you need to sort yourself out, yeah? They were just honest with me, and Mickey Finn as well, but more Groove and Fabio, just really, like, on me, like, come on, do you know what I mean? I remember Groove, when I came out of rehab, he said to me, you're coming to live at my house, I'm going to keep an eye on you. I was like, no, I'm all right, you know, because I've got a big family, but that's how he was taking it, like, you are coming to stay with me for a while, do you know what I mean? And I never forget that, you know? Never forget it.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing.
Beautiful.
What a beautiful thing. I mean, you say, you know, like things have changed. I mean, one of the things I wanted to touch on as we come up to a point in this conversation where it's like, we're like almost at present day. Well, we are at present day, is that you've now, not only as a DJ and an author, but now you're also acting as well.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I've done a few, like, small parts.
Oh.
Like, started off just like on the set as an extra, and I've got a couple of parts. I've got one leading role that keeps getting delayed. The filming stage keeps getting delayed because of one thing or another. But I've had to like learn a script, and I'm ready for more roles. You know what I mean? And I've done a few lessons, but I think I'm a natural, to be honest with you. Do you know what I mean? I do. I'm confident enough to think I can do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Right. Look at this now. You've been doing this podcast. Who would have thought that 3 people who I know would already be authors? So already, I mean, it's quite a high ratio. If you think of like the amount of podcasts that we had, of them, there's at least 4 people who have had books out.
Yeah.
That's quite a high ratio, you know?
It is.
Right? And then 2 of them are acting. Actually, I think 3 actually have been acting, if you include Sharissa as well.
And Ray Keith as well.
And well, those are the 3 I'm talking about. So you, Sharissa, and Ray. And Goldie, so it's 4 again.
Yeah.
In fact, it's 5 people have had books out and 3 actors. This says something about the creative spirit in us, in you guys, you know what I mean? Taking it further and further, you know? I wanted to also speak about, I know that you're working on an album at the moment.
Yeah, the infamous album. I started it during lockdown. There's 2 things I started. I started my podcast, which is, I've done season 1 and I've taken a break. It's like, I wanted to do like a TV show. You know, TV shows, they have season 1, then you wait about 6 months, then they come with season 2. So at the moment, I'm just kind of planning season 2. Do you know what I mean? But I can't, after season 1, because I had some really big guests on there. So season 2, I've got to up it, haven't I? boom,
It
so I can take
maintains
it onto another
take
level.
it onto the next level.
And the album, which, you know, is a multi-genre album, it's called Legacy. It's a story of my life in music. It's got different genres of music. I got like some amazing artists on there. I'm about 3 tunes away from finishing it. I'm really proud of it. I don't know who's putting it out yet, but it's nearly done.
That's amazing, yeah. And I've heard some of the records and they're popping off at the moment.
Yeah.
On the circuit as well.
People,
do you know what I mean?
people are liking it. People are loving it. Do you know what I mean?
Also, Frost, there's a word on the street that, well, it's not the word on the street, I know for a fact. You also now have your own rum brand?
Yes.
And
Liquid V rum.
Yeah, tell me about that rum
So
brand.
basically, I've got a very close relationship with 2 guys called Pete and Dan who run a thing called Brixton Streetwear. And I'm like the main kind of ambassador for it. I wear all their stuff and stuff like that. And they're kind of linked in with all the other businesses in Brixton. And they introduced me to these 2 guys who run a company called Market Row Rum. So we spoke and we said, you know what? I thought I'd like to have my own drink. Do you know what I mean? What people have to understand, what I do, I always look at America, I'm very heavily influenced by a guy called Master P. Master P, ever since I first started in this business, he's been the one I always look at. I always looked at everything Master P done. And I'm going to go back again. When we first put out our first V Classic album, we was on tour in America. And I remember going around New York City, seeing all these stickers saying, who is Cameron? That's before Cameron came out. And I was like, who is Cameron? And I thought, wow, what a great bit of marketing. And we done exactly the same thing when we came back with the Planet V album. Had them, street team, put them everywhere. So I was always very heavily influenced by what was going on over there. Do you know what I mean? But Master P...
Yeah, I remember that well. I remember you were heavily into Master P as well. You just brought back a memory that I'd forgotten about.
Yeah, I was very heavily influenced in the way he marketed his stuff and just the way he promoted himself as a businessman. And I was always looked at Master P and what he was doing. That's why I wanted to have a drink as well, because I thought Master P's doing it, I'm going to do it, yeah? And so, we, I had a meeting with the guys, beautiful meeting. We were both on the same page, reading from the same hymn sheet. So we decided to knock heads together. They said, what do you want to do? So, you know, I went down to the distillery, gave them my vision of what I wanted. I wanted to do a pineapple spice rum. There's a guy called Mikey there, absolute genius, who knows how to make it. He's like a scientist. And I sat down there many afternoons, having little sips, leaving there like, oh, in the end, I had to bring people down there to taste it for me because I was just fed up with like, I'm not really a heavy drinker, not unless I'm on a mission, do you know what I mean? So sitting down in the afternoon drinking rum, it's not really my thing, do you know what I mean? Many people might think, what are you talking about? But you lot have seen me when you lot have seen me when I'm on it or something like that. That's when I have a drink. Other than that, I'm not really in it. So, yeah, and we had the drink's out now. We've done a limited edition run, which went well. And now we've gone again. I've changed the design of the label. And yeah, it's going well, man.
Do you plan for that to get into like, is that what your ultimate goal is, for it to kind of like, that you can reach inside Tesco's and go and pick it up from there or something like that?
Yeah, that'd be great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That'd be great if we could do that. We're a long way off that because, you know, I thought that when you've done a drink, you could just go and make a deal with the pub and they could take it, but it's not that simple.
Okay.
They got deals with breweries and you got to be locked into the brewery and all that.
Okay.
But you don't know all this stuff until you're going to do it. You understand?
Okay,
so it's not as simple as just getting your thing into. Do you know what I mean? You got to.
There's
like a little monopoly.
Another world.
It's another world.
Yeah.
So you have to. It's another thing to learn all about.
Yeah.
So I'm in the middle of learning about that at the moment.
Okay. I mean, one thing about you that's been consistent throughout your life is that you are quintessentially a Brixtonite.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No matter what, for good,
I still live in Brixton now.
For better, for poorer, for good, for bad, you've always been Brixton.
Yeah.
And you've seen it change from what it was to what it is now, and you've always been there.
Yeah. I'm heavily involved in stuff in Brixton. I'm heavily involved with putting on nights in Brixton. A lot of my business is based in Brixton.
And that's the point.
My promoting is in Brixton. The drinks in Brixton. Everything I'm involved with, business-wise, is all in Brixton.
And it's been like that now. We consider that, the reason why I say about the consistency of it, that's been like for over 30 odd years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now here you are.
I don't really have any outside interests outside of Brixton.
Yeah. And there you go. And then you
except for in Guyana. That's about it.
But tell me more about the event that you have at Brixton, the Brixton base.
Yeah, it started off in lockdown. In lockdown, I was like, shit. And, we're doing this social distance thing, and I was like, because I never really wanted to be a promoter.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to be a promoter. My friend / sister, who I call my sister Sophie, she's the one that kind of got me to do promoting, and we started off like a little old school thing up in Causden. And then from then, I kind of got the bug. Before that, I didn't. Obviously, I was doing promoting before with Bryan and Planet V, but we had a whole team of people dealing with it. It was the first time I've gone out on my own and just thought, let me just do something with someone else. And then I had the opportunity to do the social distance thing 5 minutes from my house in Brixton during lockdown, and it was okay, And then when lockdown started finishing, they said, do you want to carry this thing on? I just thought, yeah. And so I came up with this name, Brixton Bass. And I think it was just the timing was right and everything. And I had by this time, I got a lot of experience in marketing and how to put things together. And then I had a team of people down at Hootenanny who are fantastic people. They work really hard. They're just really great people to work with, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's like, half of the job's done. When you've got a great team of people to work with, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As I said, it all left to me, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll get slaughtered if I don't bring up the fact that while you were mentioning about not wanting to be a promoter but then still doing it, I think that to not mention movement in this conversation, I think there's going to be a lot of people in the comments saying like, "What the hell why didn't you mention it?"
Yeah.
And movement kind of like fell in line. Was around this period of time where you guys were really, really hammering it with the whole V, with Ronnie, with Cross, with Di, with Sav, that whole moment with Marquis, etc., with Patif. Tell me a bit about that time there.
It was like crazy because obviously, like
that was a big thing there, and the end, and all of these things. Those were big parties, man.
Yeah, they were. Do you know what happened? What happened at the time? Because I wasn't actually I wasn't a partner in movement. Movement was Bryan, Oliver, and Ado and Steve. Because at the time when that started, I'd had one of my depression episodes. And I was missing. I didn't even go to the office for 6 months.
Right.
No one could. I just went to gigs at the weekend, angry. And I was still DJing, but no one saw me.
Right.
So when all these planning was going on, I wasn't around. So when I finally came, I've had about 4 of these episodes during my whole career.
Right.
Where I just go missing, or I just go into this deep fucking dark hole. Then I just come out of it like this. And somehow, by the grace of God, I'm still able to be part of everything.
It's amazing. Yeah, thank God for that. Yeah.
So when I came out of my hole, they were running movement, and obviously, I'm part of the family, innit? So, but technically, it was their thing. It was a great time, and it's lovely to meet. Because when I came out, Bryan had met these guys, Ado, Oliver, and I didn't know them, so I just kind of got to know them. Because literally, I'd never left my house for nearly a year. I was just depressed all the time, just in my house, and But I'd go to music house, cut on my dubs, go home, and talk to people and be like, but really. I was fucked. I was in a hole. You know what I mean? And this is around about the time when movement started. Then I kind of came out of it and, And I think it's crazy because I literally, looking back now, and it's crazy because I was earning enough. I was a successful DJ, so I could afford not to go anywhere. I just go out at the weekend, earn loads of money, come home, and my house was all right. I just buy a load of shopping and just sit in my house like this, depressed. Me and my dog, Levi. And that was it. No one saw me. I didn't go to the office. Bryan was like, come on, come out. Bryan was like, what can we do for you? Can I get you a holiday somewhere? I was like, no. You know what I mean? Bryan tried everything to get me out of my house because I was just having an episode, man. You know what I mean? And I think that was around the time when he confiscated the knife off me.
It's bizarre listening to what you said just then, yeah? And I tell you why, because even for the years that I've known you, I never knew that was going. I knew you had your problems, and I knew you had your ways, and I knew you as who you are, and I think that we maintained our friendship is because of the fact that there are times where I would have to say, what the F you doing?
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And not a lot of people will do that with you. But even then, you know what I mean? And the times you spent, I mean, you say Levi in that window of time there.
Yeah.
Levi was the brother dog of my dog.
That's right.
That's how close we were, that we both had the same dogs
That's right.
from the same litter.
Yeah.
But
And
I never
Moose
knew you were going through
Yeah,
it.
because...
And Little Moose as well.
Yeah, the thing about it as well.
Little Moose as well had a side puppy as well.
I think people always looking for all my problems were drugs, but they wasn't. I had one 8-month period where I went totally off the fucking rails. But before that, when I went missing, it was just down to depression, like being in such a hole. I couldn't get myself out of it. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't talking to no therapist, nothing. I was just, you know what I mean? Now I have the tools where I can deal with it.
We'd never know.
Do you know what I mean? So people always thought, I was, like for example, I was talking to Hype, and Hype always said to me, I thought you didn't like me. I was like, why did you think that? I just gave this impression off where people just thought, he doesn't like me. Do you know what I mean? Where I just was just fucking depressed or just like that, just angry when I just didn't know why. It's only like in recent years where I've gone to therapy, where I've learned more about myself, where I know how to deal with it, you know what I mean? And I'm a lot better at dealing with it. But, you know, I went through a real bad time. I think it's only afterwards when I was willing to talk to people and go to therapy and go to group sessions. I think when I'm going to rehab really helped me, because that's the first time I got to talk about my problems. Before that, I was just, you know how we grew up as black people, you just don't talk about nothing, do you? You just try to deal with it yourself, you know? Yeah,
I mean, GQ said this thing, we have this laugh, you know what I mean? It's not a laugh, but he makes me laugh, that guy. We had a conversation one time and we were speaking about depression. And we were speaking about it in the context of when we were younger, and that he and our parents, you know what I mean, not really knowing about depression. And he made a joke. He was like, yeah, you can imagine going to our mums and saying like, yeah, you know, I've got depression.
So what kind of thing is it?
He goes, depression? I will give you depression. I will give you depression. Go upstairs.
Stubborn foolishness. Stubborn foolishness about depression. Yeah?
You have depression? I will give you depression.
Now my mum, because my mum's a social worker. My mum's a social worker, and now she's like very much more aware of it. But them days, and
why
stop his stupidness?
And so you come all the way through 30s, 40s, 50s even, and then to realise, right, so maybe I had something wrong. It's like which has become so much more common now as well, that I hear a lot of people saying how they believe, I believe I might have ADHD. And they've only realised it and been diagnosed with it in their late 40s.
I'm actually starting to think I've got it myself.
And there you go.
You understand?
So these are...
because the more and more I speak to people, I'm like, well, this sounds like me, you know? And I've got one of my closest friends, Dr. Rachel Gow. She's written a book on nutrition, and she's a nutritionist and expert on ADHD. And the more I speak to her, I look at her, I think, this sounds like I could... But I'm almost scared to go and be diagnosed with it. But
what difference? I mean, I suppose say what difference? At least then, like the therapist.
Because
like, there may be.
I've got a very short attention span. All these things I'm hearing, I'm like, this sounds like it could be me. Even my handwriting is gone. Like I used to be able to write really neat. Now I'm like, I've got to really concentrate to write properly.
Right.
You understand? Which is crazy.
Yeah. So Frost, for anybody else listening right now, knowing that these are things that you are finding out about yourself, like in latter life, what sort of advice would you offer to anybody who's sort of like listening to this with regards to depression and or any sort of mental of challenges they're going through now? This
business can be so lonely. People don't understand it can be really lonely. And I think, you know, the tools I've learned growing up in this business, gone from not being able to communicate with anyone and being in a complete hole, as I explained, to now have the tools to be able to navigate myself through it. I like to say to anyone out there, if you're feeling down or you're starting to feel yourself sink, which can happen to anyone at any time, reach out to someone, talk to someone, get a therapist. Everyone needs an outlet. that they can speak about, no matter what, because it never gets better until you can't just put a plaster on it. You need to find out the root of it. So I'd like to, send massive shout to my therapist. I've got two. One called Spencer, who hypnotises me, and another one, I'm not allowed to say his name because he's NHS approved, and I'm not allowed to say his name. But I'm nearly finished my course with him, because even up to recently, I took myself away to a wellness retreat. I had to cancel my American tour. You know what I mean? It kind of, you know what I mean? It's like, I just wasn't right in the head. Yeah. I had to cancel my trip. And I took myself away to Spain to this retreat for a weekend, and done like sound baths and meditation and stuff like that. And it really helped me. And I literally just done this recently. And I came back and went to Glastonbury, and I was cool. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I'm going to do another one in October, because Brandon Block, my friend, your friend, Brandon Block is setting up a retreat in Ibiza, right?
It's amazing.
So, anyone who wants to look into it, just Google it. If you go to any of Brandon's socials, you'll see it on there. So I'm going to do that in October after all the festival season, and that will set me up for going into the next year. Do you know what I mean? So this is something that I'm going to continue doing, and I suggest anyone out there, you find tools that work for you and try to work on yourself and make yourself happier and better, because, you get it by communicating with people and by accepting yourself and accepting who you are. That's how you navigate yourself through it. You can't just sit there. It's not going to go away if you don't do something about it and try to talk to someone. Taking a lot of drugs don't help either. So, try to less of the drugs and more of the communicating, and, you'll be okay. Do you know what I mean? But communication is key. You have to talk, and you have to accept yourself and where you're at before you can move forward.
That's a really, really, really kind thing to say, you know what I mean? And I hope that anybody who listens to this, who's going through any of those challenges, that whether it's even in the smallest way, that helps them.
I hope so too.
Yeah, I really do. We're like halfway point of the year now. What does the rest of the year hold for you?
Well, obviously we're celebrating 30 years of V this year. We're doing festivals, we're doing tours, and I think there's so many places that we have to touch. I think it's going to roll into next year as well, 30 years of V, because we have to hit Australia and New Zealand, which we haven't been to for a long time. I know we've got to do America, obviously.
I mean, you guys are responsible, as you say, Australia, to me, as though you guys are responsible for opening up so many different countries to this music and artists to this music.
Yeah.
And from Australia to Brazil and everything in between. 30 years is not a small thing.
It's crazy because, I remember I was the first DJ to go and play in Dubai. And I remember going there when there was nothing. It was the desert. And it's funny enough, I walked I was in a bar, and I saw someone walking. I was like, "Is that Andy C?" I saw Andy C. He was on a holiday with his wife, and we spent the evening together. And he came to the do, and it was crazy. You know what I mean? It was like,
and that was years ago.
That's when this is over 20 years ago.
Right. Okay.
When there was nothing.
Yeah.
There was absolutely nothing in Dubai. Do you know what I mean? I was the first one to go and play there. Do you know what I mean? And and Andy was there on holiday with his girlfriend, his girlfriend, who's still his wife now.
Yeah. Well, Frost, listen, I thank you very, very much for joining us today. It's been. I mean, I've known you all this time, and even I was taken on a journey tonight.
Yeah.
And we can go after here, have something to eat, and we can take in some of that stuff, because I was just blown away by a lot of it. So I appreciate you coming down and sharing the time. And like I said, I hope that it's been helpful to
I hope whoever needs anything from this can take something out of it and look at my experiences and try to navigate themselves in a better way than I have in a lot of circumstances.
And what better way to end that? Thank you, my brother.
Please, thank you.
Yeah, bless up.
Bless.
Nice.
Nice.
And that's a wrap.